I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane, broadcasting from the Marcus Garvey House here in North Minneapolis. And you know, it's all about the neighborhood. This is a conversation about how we build our community, our neighborhood, house by house, family by family. We're focusing on business creation, business development, economic development, and culture. It's a wonderful conversation, a robust conversation. One of the guides for this conversation is my brother, who takes us on a musical journey, Wayne McFarlane and jazz. Check him out.
In my room, I feel good when I'm thinking about my neighborhood.
Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Thank you for being here. We're in the middle of an exciting political season for our community, for North Minneapolis. And one of the races that's an important one is for Hennepin County Commissioner. This is District 2, and today we're pleased to have the candidates for District 2 to talk to our community, to talk to you who are listening on KFAI and you who are watching on TV about their passion, their interest, their desire to serve you. So I'm going to ask each candidate here, I'll list them, Paula Pentel, Kathleen Murdock, Leslie Davis, Rolf Erickson, Tonia Johnson, and Linda Higgins to introduce themselves personally, spend about a minute saying why you want to serve the community, then we'll come back and ask follow-up questions. I'll start with Kathleen Murdock. Kathleen, I'm glad you're here. Tell us why you want to serve on Hennepin County as a commissioner for District 2.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I do want to thank Insight News for holding this forum, because I really think with and I'm still going to say 10-way race for county commissioner, even though Don Samuels is officially withdrawn, his name will be on the ballot, and I think he's going to get some votes whether he wants them or not. So I think it's really important that people know who the candidates are in a 10-way race, and there's no incumbent, and this is there's no incumbent, and so it's important to know as much as you can about each of the candidates. And I decided to run for county commissioner for probably a couple of reasons. I have had a long-time career in Hennepin County government. I'm passionate about county government and the services that it provides, and I know county government, and I think that's huge because, you know, to me, I always kind of refer to it as the invisible government in many ways, because people know a lot about city government and they know a lot about state government, but they don't know much about county government. And I spent my 33-year career working in county government, downtown in the government center. So I think I already have a lot of good ideas of where we can streamline services, where we can cut costs, and I can hit the ground running. You know, I know the organization, I know the issues, I know the people. And also having served on the Plymouth City Council, and that's where I reside is Plymouth. I was on the Plymouth City Council for 5 years and the Planning Commission there for 2 years. I know how long it can take to get up to speed at any level of government. So I think that's something I can bring, that on day one, I can start working for the residents of this district.
Thank you, Kathleen Murdock. Leslie Davis, please.
Good afternoon. I've lived at Lowry and Lindale in North Minneapolis for the last 14 years, and I know the area pretty well. And this stretches all the way across for this particular campaign from St. Anthony to Plymouth. This county commissioner job is extremely important because they're dealing with a $1.5 billion budget and not have an opportunity to have 1/7 of the voice in the distribution of that money. Now, I know a lot of it is already pre-allocated, but there's certainly a lot of money that needs to go around to be creating jobs and housing for people that are in desperate situations. And I want to say I've run for office before. I've never won, and I've never held office, so I don't take any responsibility for the catastrophes that we're facing. the economic problems, the job shortages. I haven't been part of that whole scenario. I've testified at many meetings, whether they've been the county or the legislature, and because of their lacking of life experiences, they don't really understand a lot of the plans that I propose. My water plan, energy plan, the money plan. They're just ignorant of it. People don't know how money is created and comes into circulation. And if you look at the Davis money plan, or we call it the Earth Protector money plan, you'll see that these are spectacular ideas, and they're new and they're innovative, and you need somebody with my record to be able to move those things forward. There'll be no pushing around for my district, which has 162,000 people. I'll represent you fully. I'll make sure that every kid, and if it's called micromanaging, that's what I'll do. Make sure every kid that goes to 5th grade knows how to read at the 5th grade. I'm going to make sure that people have a decent place to live and a place to work, and they have a good diet, and they have good health care. And they don't have that at the present time, and they don't have it because the leadership is terrible in the state. They're all politically connected, and it's one party or the other, and you wash my back, and I'll wash your back, and that's why we're in this terrible problem today.
Thank you. Stop there. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
Leslie Davis, thank you so much. Rolf Erickson.
I'm Rolf Erickson. I'm a lifetime resident of Hennepin County. I was actually born in Minneapolis, raised in Deep Haven, and I live in Plymouth now. Been married for 44 years to my wife Jean, have one son. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I currently work as a contract property tax assessor for 5 cities in western Hennepin County. I had been an employee of Hennepin County for 5 years, so I also know the ins and outs of government. I'm running because, first of all, I've never run for office before, but I'm running because I don't ever recall being approached by a county commissioner for my opinion, a questionnaire, or anything to do with county government. It's a stealth government. I'm very concerned with government at all levels, and I'm concerned with government at the county level because of the inefficiencies. Some are caused by unfunded mandates, others are caused just by cumbersome work rules. And so I decided I wanted to step forward and try to do something about this as a citizen. So I'm a political neophyte, and I'm a hard worker, and what I would do when elected, the main thing is to listen to people. I don't know a lot about the issues in a lot of the neighborhoods because I'm from the suburbs, but I'm a good listener, and I propose to have town hall meetings quarterly, listen to the citizen input, and vote the citizen input where I can affect things. Many things I can have no effect on. So thank you very much for letting me appear.
Thank you, Rolf Erickson. Next, Linda Higgins.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who's come today and who's going to be watching or listening to this. I'm Linda Higgins, and I have for the last 16 years been the state senator representing North Loop, and downtown Minneapolis. I'm running for Hennepin County Commissioner to continue the work that I've been doing on behalf of the citizens. In the years that I have been at the legislature, I have passed groundbreaking legislation, some first in the nation legislation, and I think I am thoughtful and collaborative. I work well on both sides of the aisle. Hennepin County commissioners are a whole lot less partisan in the way they work than the legislature. Anything is less partisan than the way the legislature works. But I'm really looking forward to working with people who like to sit down and figure out a solution to a problem that's been identified without the press conferences and without all of the rigmarole that goes on. I have lived in North Minneapolis since 1977. I've lived in Hennepin County since 1973 when I graduated from college and moved to the Twin Cities. I look forward to working with all of you in the future to make our community an even better place than it is. Thank you.
Let's continue now talking to Tonia Johnson. Tonia, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Al. I really do commend Inside News for putting this forum on, and I also would like to thank the Minneapolis Urban League for hosting the forum. I'm Tonia Johnson, and I've lived in this community all my life. I'm third generation North Minneapolis, and I'm proud of that. I am running for Hennepin County Commissioner. I've worked directly for the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners as policy aide to Commissioner Mark Stingline, who just stepped down. So I know firsthand what it takes to get the job done. Working with Stingline, we did a lot of projects, in particular the African American Men Project, the North Minneapolis Health Advisory Committee, and a host of others. And I'm running because it is time to retire the career politicians. Anytime you can sit here and boast and say you've been in office for 16 years and we still have double-digit unemployment in North Minneapolis, and we still have disparities from juvenile adjudication to health disparities to poverty levels that are still double-digit in various areas of our neighborhood, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I'm not proud of that at all. And so I'm running. I have worked in this community for 15+ years. I have done a lot, worked right here at the Minneapolis Urban League, Summit Academy, OIC, just to name a few. So I do know a lot about how the county works. I'm extremely innovative, and I have proven that in this community, and so I do look forward to serving the residents of District 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonia Johnson. Next, Paula Pentel.
Yes, thanks, Al. And thanks again to Insight News and as well to the Urban League for hosting this today. I'm Paula Pentel. I was raised in suburban Hennepin County until I entered 6th grade, and we moved into North Minneapolis 2627 Penn. I had the pleasure of door knocking my old house the other day, which was kind of I think upsetting for the people there because I knew so much about the house. But I am running for Hennepin County Commissioner because I think that it is time to have someone who shows up on the street and shows up at our meetings and does understand what's happening in the neighborhood and in the diverse communities that are served by this seat. I teach at the University of Minnesota. I've been there 17 years as an undergraduate advisor and teaching geography of the Twin Cities. I became an urban geographer in part to understand what was happening in my community on the north side, why we were always last to get anything new. I graduated from Minneapolis North in 1974, moved from the old school to the new school, and I've stayed involved in North Minneapolis through the West Broadway Area Coalition and through Hollywood Studio of Dance, where my kids were for many years, and spent a year of my life remodeling that building. I sit on the city council in the city of Golden Valley, so I have this great life where I get to be an academic and think about things urban and teach a course about the geography of the Twin Cities and the urban environment, and then also have that on-the-ground stuff, budgeting. I would call myself a fiscally conservative person. We have kept our budget flat for the past 4 years, our levy. I've run nonpartisan and been elected twice, nonpartisan to the city council. I think it is important. The county commissioner seat is a nonpartisan seat, and I'm glad to hear that they work nonpartisan at the county because they should. They're all elected in a nonpartisan way. I'm really about bridging communities, and I've had such a good time. I've been out talking to the neighborhoods and hearing about some of the environmental issues that people are worried about that are in this district, the Herc plant. Are we going to be storing trains in the Bassett Creek Valley? People are concerned about transportation and having equity there. And I'm particularly interested in early childhood family education and making sure that every child hits school ready. And I think the county could step up and help the school districts across the district making sure that that happens. Thanks again, Al, for having us.
Thank you very much, Paula Pentel. Next, Roger Smithrud. Roger?
Well, first I'd like to thank you for having this debate. First, I'd like to thank you for having this opportunity to speak, and I'd also like to thank the Urban League. My name's Roger Smithrud. I've been a lifelong North Minneapolis resident. Grew up through Camden. About 28 years ago, I moved up into the Jordan area, less than a mile from here, and have lived there for the last 28 years, or 26 years. And I've worked at my current job for the last 27 years at the Star Tribune. In the mailroom, not writing. I'm not a writer. But I didn't get involved into politics until a few years back when we had an increase of thefts of copper in houses, where houses were being destroyed. And then the city decided to take care of the problem by targeting boarded houses, neighborhoods, and then not giving extensions, not working with the elderly, and we just want the houses fixed or the people and the houses gone. That was the intent. That was my impression from what I was told from the inspector that came from the city council. That in turn got me involved into politics because of all that was going on with my neighbors, a few orders for myself, and then helping out the neighbors at how to work through the system in order to understand the orders that they were given. And then I started seeing more and more. I opened my eyes to the stuff that was going on, and how things were just being shoved down some people's throats and intentionally set up to where if they had multiple buildings and they weren't right up to code, they attacked them. And that really brought my attention to it. And then dealing with 9/11, also in the same time frame, it really impacted. I ran for the House of Representatives, figuring I might be able to change some of the laws, and that was in '08. And then I ran for city council. At least I didn't come in last place. And then I ran for Hennepin County Commissioner, District 2, against Mark Stingland. I managed to get 16%. Blair Tremere got 22. I didn't make it onto the final list. And with watching what has been done, how the people haven't been helped, how their rights feel like, or I feel, that the workers and the residents' rights have been just overran, it's got to change. I'm a person that's for the workers. We need to have more living wage jobs, more employers capable of providing living wage jobs, and that are willing to provide them.
Roger, thank you. Thank you for that statement. Let me take a minute here to do two things. One, I want to introduce my co-host for this program, Reverend Randolph Staten, who's co-chair of the Coalition of Black Churches and the African American Leadership Summit, and is a former representative representing this neighborhood in North Minneapolis. It was, I think, 58B once upon a time, and it's now 59B. Reverend Staten, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Al.
I want to ask you to do some backgrounding and in the process pose a question that all of our candidates can respond to. But before I do that, I want to, in the spirit of disclosure and transparency, say to the record and to all the candidates here, my newspaper, Insight News, has endorsed one of the candidates here. So we have endorsed Tonia Johnson, and I think it's fair and appropriate for me to tell you that and to let you know that we've taken that position already. So with that, we hope that that meets your expectation of transparency and fairness. Our job is to be fair in this meeting today to everyone here. Reverend Staten, we'll do this in two parts. We've got about a minute more in this section, but give us something to think about, and then when we come back for the next section, we'll ask you to say more to direct the question to the candidates. But what are the overriding issues that our consumers are concerned about?
There's one issue that it seemed to me from a national perspective and a local perspective that it's become something we don't talk about anymore, and that's the area of poverty. And yet poverty is ripping our nation, ripping our county, and ripping our state out in so many different areas. And so I look at candidates and I'm surprised at the absence of any kind of thought or solutions on that area. And I guess I want to sort of direct a question to each one of the candidates in this area because the county, although some people say that it's an invisible empire, it's an empire the same. It's one of the biggest in the state, $1.64 billion in expenditure with an increase of over $40 million over the last year. So $1.6 billion. And there's another thing I'll add to the question when we get the time.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll come back in a minute and continue with that question, the line of questioning, giving the candidates a chance to respond. Your impressions and your plans to deal with the eradication, to address the problem of poverty in our community. Stay tuned.
So much to do in 1 hour's time. But if we think about it, get it right without driving the line, and we'll know conversation. Have this conversation today.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We're continuing with our screening of candidates for Hennepin County Commissioner representing District 2. Reverend Randolph Staten, co-chair of the Coalition of Black Churches and African American Leadership Summit, former legislator for North Minneapolis, was posing the question about poverty. So Reverend Staten, let me ask you to be very specific. What question do you have for these candidates about poverty in our community?
I think a two-part question, Al. One is, what are your thoughts, ideas, or programs for a system of strategies to eliminate poverty in Hennepin County? And number two, since there is a budget of some $1.6 billion, a huge budget, for the last 10 years, Hennepin County has been out of compliance in terms of all of those major dollars with making sure that African American, other people of color, and women business and vendors get a share of that dollar, in fact creating literally a void of literally hundreds of millions of dollars in jobs in those communities. So what will you do about that?
Let's start with Kathleen Murdock.
Well, that is a huge issue, as we all know, and there's many different pieces to it, from jobs, which I think is huge. And I also wanted to say that, you know, we talk about this being a diverse district, but I was going to say that I think there is one common denominator, at least one, throughout this district, and that's that families are struggling economically throughout this district. I don't care if you live in Plymouth or North Minneapolis or any of the other areas, it's a problem. And in Plymouth, we have Interfaith Outreach and Community Partners, which just moved into Plymouth from Wayzata, and they do a huge service, and the Plymouth City Council helped them relocate, and they do a huge service with their food shelf and affordable housing, and there's a great need that's being served there. So there's just, you know, the unemployment is huge, and we really have to do more things with job training, getting people employed. I personally experienced it where my husband was out of work for an extended period of time. And let me tell you, you know, it's tough. And you need, you know, you have to make those tough budget decisions and retrench. And I think, if anything, Hennepin County has not done that. You know, I was there a long time through the prosperous years and then the very lean years more recently, but I have not seen them cutting spending to a big degree in a lot of areas that I think are not the business of the county. And the county should be focusing on the social services, the services to vulnerable kids and adults. And, you know, I don't see, but I see us doing a lot of things, maybe with light rail and other things that really, you know, aren't necessarily the county's business, and we need to retrench.
Leslie Davis.
Well, I understand the poverty issue, and I'm going to tell this group that you have a chance of a lifetime to put somebody in the county commissioner's office that has the programs and the plans and the guts to stand up and get things done. If you look at my piece of literature before you leave today, or take it with you, the water plan that I propose will bring in $80 million in fresh money to Hennepin County, and use that for our energy conversion. We can't continue. Not going to go shut down the coal plants and the nukes, but if we install energy conservation and efficiency in all residential, commercial, and industrial facilities, we'll put thousands of people to work, but we have to train them first. So the money from my water plan would go to the energy plan so people could get trained and go to work. You won't get that. I don't have to sit down with a whole bunch of people and a whole group of people to find out what the problems are. I experience them every day. As an earth protector and a founder of that group, I know about mold and radon gas and asbestos in people's homes that nothing is being done about it. They don't even know they have mold or radon gas in their houses. And nobody's out there to take care of those things. They say, well, we're going to shuffle around and we're going to cut the budget here and cut the budget there. No cutting. It's not a time for cutting. It's a time for getting more money and putting people to work. So the Davis Water Plan brings in the money. The Davis Energy Plan puts the people to work. And we can go further, talking about education and health and how money really comes into circulation. And you want to borrow it, or do you want to pay it in. So you could spend it in or lend it in. And under my plan, we lend it in. And the way it gets done, a lot of it has to be done by the legislature. Hennepin County has one of the best intergovernmental relations groups of lobbyists, and I'll put them to work getting my programs through for the county and for the people.
Leslie Davis, thank you. Rolf, same question. Rolf Erickson.
I don't believe we need any more taxes. When I talk to people, the main thing I hear is my house value is going down and my taxes are going up. Now, even if you put the tax on industry, that hurts everyone, because without a strong private sector, there are no funds coming in to have government. So if we didn't have a strong private sector, we're not going to have the tax money that we need for the government. Now, I met with the Minneapolis Union Council with President Bill McCarthy, and I wanted to ask for their endorsement. And I had a 4-point plan that I gave them, and basically it covers employment. And I'm not going to go into the whole plan, I'll just give you the points of it. But the first point was to ask the union to use their funds, government funds and private funds, set up a small business administration loan program for the citizens of the county. So it wouldn't just be our district, it would be the whole county. Essentially, then there would be certain rules, and if they met a certain size, then they would be able to be free, you know, pay the loan back. We don't need to go into all that. But the second thing was that I would ask, since we already have light rail, number one is we would go after the Crown Hydro project, which President McCarthy is in favor of online, of refurbishing that hydro, and Coon Rapids Dam, to create enough electricity to run the existing streetcar system. This would have jobs, lots of jobs to refurbish the dams, and this would be jobs for people in the area here. Third, to bring the manufacturer to North Minneapolis, wherever we could bring it, the Ford plant maybe, of the cars for this light rail. They're all coming from foreign countries. We have in the United States one manufacturer of this light rail and streetcars, the Union Car Company. It's in Portland, Oregon. It's actually owned by the Iron Workers Union there. So I asked the union to use their influence to bring the manufacture of those cars here. And then the last point is not actually for jobs specifically, but actually to have an incentive program at Hennepin County so that employees would suggest cost-cutting measures to make the government more efficient. And so if you can make it all more efficient, bring employment here, if we were to be a poster child, as long as we have the light rail anyway, for using our own power to run it and make the cars.
Rolf, thank you. Linda Higgins.
Thank you. I think that one of the biggest things we can do is actually recognize that not everybody starts at the same place when they're searching for a job that can provide for their families. And I think the county has a big role to play in helping the folks who need job training, education, and other things that can help them get to a point where they can have a job that provides for their families. If you read the morning paper, you saw that 68% of the people who live here in North Minneapolis receive county services of some kind. Now that's the elderly, people with disabilities, and then people who just can't provide yet. And we have a role, every one of us has a role to play in helping families get to that point where they can be self-sufficient. If you read the stories, the quotes from the people who are in this story today, talking about how hard they've worked to get more education, to get to a salary level that then takes them off the county programs. But maybe they still need the health care, or maybe they still need the child care services. So I think the county's got a large role to play. Commissioner Opat, in his State of the County address a couple of months ago, suggested that the county board should have a couple of seats on the Minneapolis School Board. And I think that was roundly thought of as overstepping, which I agree. But I think that the importance of sitting down and talking about the education that our kids are receiving and if they're not getting a good enough education, how that affects them, and getting, the possibility exists that they might be getting county services sometime in the future. So one of the things that I think the county needs to do is to work more collaboratively with the other levels of government. There are lots of programs that are lots of job training programs. There are lots of things that the county can work collaboratively. Everybody's got a different idea, a different point of view of how we go about that.
Thank you, Linda Higgins. Next, Tonia Johnson.
Al, thank you very much. This is an issue that I know oh so well because I worked at many of the organizations that are supposed to mitigate poverty by placing their clients into livable wage paying jobs. However, Randy, I will answer your question with what I think. I am an entrepreneur, and what I would like to see in the grade schools, that there are entrepreneurial tracks where kids begin to learn at a younger age as to what it is they want to do and receive the training. It's almost similar to vocational training, but it's happening at a lower level. That's number one, because a lot of this we're dealing with causation of poverty that's coming from a lot of different areas. Also, I would like to see Hennepin County take the lead in actually hiring more people of color right from their own communities. I worked at Hennepin County, and I know for a fact that the Hennepin County does not hire particularly minorities to the number that they could. They could improve that. I know that's a big issue. It has been an issue. Kathleen, I'm pretty sure you could agree with that. And number three, Randy, again, Hennepin County has A-grad, and what A-grad means is it's the way the county is trying to decrease the disparity and increase graduation rates. I also think the county needs to take it a step further and make sure in so doing that those children who are getting ready to graduate and have the credentials to graduate are going off to college, okay? And there needs to be more emphasis on college. And that's when you can start mitigating poverty. But I can tell you, though, Hennepin County is already working with Summit Academy in mitigating poverty. I don't know to date as to what those deliverables are, but having worked in the nonprofit sector in an area where I did have to place people in employment, a lot of it is because our times are changing. We're in a global market now. And when you have a society that's changed, is more communication oriented than anything else, you have to find jobs that are applicable to the market. And right now, we don't have a lot of jobs because there's not enough job creation. And when you don't have enough job creation, then you have stagnation in employment. And that's really what's going on. And so poverty is an area of my concern, and I would address it by beginning with entrepreneurship type programs in the Minneapolis Public Schools.
Thank you, Tonia Johnson. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. I'm going to continue with the same question being presented to Paula Pentel and Roger Smithrud in just a minute. But I'm going to ask Reverend Staten to refine the question. I'm not sure you got the answers you wanted. And after we hear the other two presentations, we'll come back and we'll ask the other candidates to more succinctly, more clearly, more specifically, and in shorter times, address the questions raised. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Stay tuned. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. We'll continue on the question about how to address poverty and what the county's role is. We're going to hear from Paula Pentel. Paula, what's your response to this important question?
It is an important question, and as a child who grew up on AFDC, my mom was on Aid to Families with Dependent Children for 7 years. She got job training. She got a job. We were able to buy a house on contract for deed. Of course, no one would give us a mortgage. But housing security and job security is paramount for families. Families need help. Having daycare provisions for families, that article in the paper today actually made me angry because it painted this broad brush as if, you know, there was this huge amount of money going to North Minneapolis. What is it? They say later on, 18% of the human services budget, health and human services? Anyway, I think that we need to start with the families and start with the children and make sure we heard from mothers in that article today who need that child care help. And I know from friends of mine who've run daycares here in North Minneapolis that when the county cuts its services to families who need that little extra help from the county, families are no longer able to afford that daycare that allows them to have the job. In terms of countywide jobs, I think that the county needs to have some responsible contractor provisions so that any contracts that are going to be done by outside employees of the county, those contractors are responsible for figuring out how to hire from in the community and employing people from in the community. We've got some excellent job training services on the north side that could really benefit from having the county and other employers tap them. Employing youth through programs like StreetWorks is great, but I think that the program that the city has, that Step Up program, is something that the county might want to step into as well, where youth are being put into summer jobs that really show them what the opportunity is out there in the world of work, and they're doing really good work in those jobs. I've worked with several Step Up interns at the university and also the West Broadway Coalition. So I think that there's a lot of facets that need to be taken care of, but we need to focus on making sure we've got families who have parents that are ready to go out there and get a job. So we need to take care of the children.
Thank you, Paula Pentel. Next, Roger Smithrud.
Well, from experience, a few years after I got out of the military, I was surviving on $7,000 a year. Total income, having as many as 6 or 7 employers at one time, working odd jobs here and there, in order to have the income, in order to just make my payments. So I know how it is. And I know how it is for my neighbors. Finding a job is almost impossible. We need to have more jobs available to people. We also need to have the training so that they're capable of getting the jobs and employers that are willing to provide a living wage jobs. We also need the education through school so that people are prepared to work. Familiar with the new technologies as they're coming out. The schools being brought up on the new technologies. As the new technology comes out, the schools should have it at about the same time the businesses and the people start getting it, if not before. Thank you.
Thank you. Reverend Staten, let me ask you, as you've listened to these responses to your very important question, are we getting responses that are focused enough? And maybe you can focus the question, if you choose to. Then I'll ask the candidates, again, thank you for the insight and the vision, but even be more precise. This next round, 30-second answers to the question. Reverend Staten, how do you tighten the question up?
How do I tighten the question up?
Tighten it up.
Let me just say this, Al. Part of what we sometimes don't do is to face the full fact. We blame the victim rather than dealing with the institution that represent a big part of the problem. Oftentimes, we believe in this country, for example, that the rich get richer and to hell with the poor. And so we feed the 1%. Our policy, when we talked about expending $1.6 billion, is that we give contracts to the wealthy already, rather than, in fact, establishing more small businesses and obeying the law. We violate the law by not doing what it is that we're supposed to do, and we literally take away billions of dollars from communities that the law say that that's how we're supposed to be spending our money. That's one. Hennepin County itself is in violation of the law, and even in terms of its hiring practices. Nationally, Department of Labor came out and also said that the metropolitan area and Minneapolis had the highest rate of unemployment among black folks in the entire United States of America. We then somehow or another hide behind the fact and say, well, it's maybe just because they don't have an education. That may be part of
Or the schools are
the
not
problem.
doing their job.
But the other, when we look at the question that, in fact, a black person with a college education today still make less than a white person with a high school education, that's not just the question as far as education is concerned. And part of the problem, part of the question I guess I would maybe extend, and I heard some people answer it, is that we have a problem with out-of-home placement. That is a big part of the budget as far as the county is concerned. About 30% of your expenditure is in this particular area. And yet it increased, and 5 times more people of color, blacks and people of color, families are being disrupted by the kind of policies that are in place in terms of taking children out of their homes that you would not take out of other homes that are not of color. And so from the point of view as far as foster care and out-of-home placement, which seem to be a major problem in Hennepin County, what do you see yourself doing about it? Is that tight enough?
That's we're getting there. Kathleen Murdock.
It's still a really big issue that I could spend hours on probably. But I wanted to say a couple things quickly. I think the county could do a much better job streamlining the services, the social services that they do provide to families, because I know for a fact that many families can have 3 caseworkers they're working with in the county, and maybe a probation officer or something too, and to me that makes no sense whatsoever, that I think we need to make it easier for people to access county services and not make them go through all these multiple hoops. I also think that the state legislature has a lot to do with why local government is struggling, because the legislature has continued to cut funding to cities and counties. And I can give you good examples of community corrections funding and the criminal justice fund and local government aid and all kinds of things that have put local government in the situation it's in.
Leslie Davis.
So I'll stop there.
Leslie Davis.
Well, I spell it out. Excuse me. I spell it out in detail, the water plan. And it's not a tax. If you're a printer, you pay for your ink. If you're a grocery store, you pay for the food that you sell. And if you're an industrial user of publicly owned underground water, you're going to pay 2 pennies a gallon if I have something to do with it. That money be used for the energy plan, because where are these people going to go to work after we get them trained? Once we teach them how to read at the grade level that they're in, then they need to be trained, and they need to be trained in the energy efficiency area. That's the wave of the future for jobs. Lights and motors, insulation and glazing, and the environment is where it's going to go for the future. And I have that plan. It's specific. I have the plan. You can't pay debt with debt and get out of debt. And everybody's talking about more debt, and we're going to take this money, and we're going to do this program, we're going to do that program. And somebody told me one time that between a project and a program, I have projects. Projects pay for themselves and they bring in money. Programs are charity. We don't need charity. We need to get paid for our water, and we need to get paid for people working to install energy efficiency and conservation throughout the county.
Rolf Erickson.
I maintain that without a strong private sector, we have nothing. My plan is to foster jobs by having a small business administration that unions, banks, and business would set up. Number 2, try to bring jobs here that people can do now. There's a dam waiting there that can produce 6 megawatts of energy, could run the light rail system that they're building right now. And then I would like to bring the car manufacturer here. There's got to be some place in North Minneapolis where you can build streetcars. They used to build them here. Why can't they do it again? And the last thing, a county incentive plan to make government more streamlined. I believe in government from the bottom up, not the top down, to serve the people, not be served by them.
Let me ask the 3 of you, though. Reverend Staten asked specifically about the 30% or so of the county's budget, right? The budget is $1.6 billion. A lot of money being spent on out-of-home placement. And theoretically, that money is not being spent within the black community, or is it, Reverend Staten? How do we get to employing and turning that money over inside the service population? That's the question I'm looking for an answer for. Rolf, what do you think?
I honestly do not know enough about where the sources come from to give you a plan on that. I would have to study that and come up with something.
Leslie Davis.
Well, according to what I see, 44% of this $1.6 billion goes for health and human services already. And I don't know that the black community is not getting their share of the money that Reverend Staten is talking about. They're getting a significant amount of money, and I don't say they don't need more, but I'm saying they're getting their share, unless I don't know what I'm talking about.
Kathleen.
I spent a lot of years in my career monitoring out-of-home placements in the county, and I know a lot about that whole system. And I do think we should take a lot of those dollars that are still being spent on out-of-home placements and give them to families for services in their home, whether it is some child care or, you know, instead of, and we really worked hard in community corrections for delinquent kids to reduce those out-of-home placements. But we need to do even a better job in the social services arena, I think, and those dollars could be much better spent.
Linda Higgins.
I think one thing that could happen, and I admit I don't know any great solutions to the out-of-home placement issue, but when a child is taken from the family into out-of-home placement, I think that the family could really benefit from having an intensive conversation with social workers and whoever to figure out what it is that caused that to happen. And, you know, is it a lack of health care? Is it you need a better job? Is it that you're working 2 or 3 jobs and so that the child is home at night all by himself or herself? Is there an addiction problem? Is there whatever? There are like a million reasons why a child could be put into out-of-home placement. And I think that the child's best interest, the interest of the child is the goal that we have to have. What is the best thing for the child? I think if a social worker has no comprehension of the culture that the family has, you're not going to get anywhere in trying to help that. So helping the families, rather than just saying, okay, we're just going to remove a child from a family.
Tonia Johnson.
Okay, well, it sounds like my mic went off, number one. Okay, but it's a good thing I have a loud voice. So I hope people in the listening audience can hear me. This is Tonia Johnson. Well, again, now, it seems like this question's in 2 parts. One is, how do you mitigate poverty? And I thought I was very clear with an entrepreneurial track happening on K through 12 grades. That's number one. And also, Hennepin County needs to do a better job of hiring right from the community. I know for a fact that they don't, okay? And there's other ways to reduce poverty. Also, out-of-home placement, your question number 2. Now, there's 2 tracks into out-of-home placement. One is parental causation, meaning the child was detained due to the child's environment being deemed unsafe. Second is a juvenile having offenses, maybe mouthing off to a police officer, or having truancy issues, or some light offending type cases, and they're placed out of home. That is a huge issue, and the only thing I can say about out-of-home placements, Reverend Staten, is to really work with people like yourself, because I know the Black Coalition of Churches have done a lot of work in this area, actually just working with people in the community who have been doing work in this community, in this area, and trying to figure out a way to decrease the numbers of particularly African-American children who are placed out of the home at a much higher rate than their Caucasian counterparts.
Paula Pentel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Al. This is Paula Pentel. And I think that you were right, Tonia, in talking about there being really 2 different tracks here. So you've got a track where you've got families in crisis, and they're not able to take care of their children. And I think in that case, the county needs to have a better set of services that are there to help that family to become more stable, to be able to have their children stay at home. I also think that you need to have culturally competent people doing that work within our immigrant communities, within the African American community, within the Hispanic community. We've got, East African immigrants. We've got folks coming who are not familiar with this system, who come with their own cultural ways of raising children, and I think that sometimes we can be a little bit that the county can act in ways where they're not understanding that culture. In terms of the children who end up, say, with having altercations with the law, I was actually talking with someone who works at the Children's Home School and was lamenting the fact that when kids leave too soon, it's like you don't have enough time to help them because they are in that system. Because what this person said was back when they would be there for a year, it takes 2-3 months to get them interested in the fact that they're there and they can get some learning done. And within the last month, they want to be done and gone. So
Roger.
I think that's a huge issue.
Roger, 30 seconds.
Well, one of the first part, I believe I've already answered. The second part is that family unity. If you don't focus on the unity of the family and take care of the needs of the families, people are going to break down. They're going to have problems. So if you work on the unity of the family, then you work on the problems of the family. If there is a child in danger, then of course you need to. But it needs to be focused on reuniting those families. In the 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, the focus of the county was to pull the father out of the home. The father is the problem. Now we're dealing with all these families with no father. We need to focus on family unity, bringing the family back together. Don't take away funds from the family because the father is trying to participate in the family, being part of the family.
Thank you, Roger. We're going to close the program asking each of these candidates to make the case to you, the voter, the community, why you should vote for him or for her. We'll start with Roger Smithrud. Roger, why should people vote for you?
Well, if you have watched me in political things that I've said in the past, since 2008, I've been talking about trying to bring family unity, living wage jobs. My campaign issues and concerns realistically has not changed much. We need to turn around and have someone who is willing to look out for the best interests of their people and willing to be able to discuss and look at the full picture of an issue before making a decision.
Thank you, Roger. Paula Pentel.
Thank you, Al. Well, I really seek your vote for County Commissioner August 14th, Tuesday, get through the primary. I think that I have a great combination of knowledge about the city and the larger part of the larger region, in fact, as well as understanding the suburban portions of this community. I've worked for 20 years increasing livability, both in the community in which I currently live and on the north side. And I think that my ability to work in a nonpartisan manner, to take issues, to think about them, to look for facts, I ask hard questions. You ask people on my staff in Golden Valley, and I'm the one who's asking the hard questions. I'm not shy about doing it. I'm not shy about asking hard budget questions. And I think it's time we have someone in this seat who is comfortable being in every community in this district, and I am.
Paula, thank you so much. Next, Tonia Johnson.
Thank you, Al. I'm Tonia Johnson. I would be honored to have your support on August 14th. Why? Because I'm the right candidate for the right reasons for right now. I have already served in the capacity of policy aide on the County Commissioner Board. Based on the conversation here, it's clear that I do know the issues and the challenges that lay before us, and Hennepin County will need a very innovative leader to help lead the county in the right direction further on. So vote for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonia. Linda Higgins.
Thank you. I'm Linda Higgins. I'm a proven, tested leader. I get results. I build bridges. I'm skilled at crafting solutions to thorny issues in achievable ways. I don't play games. I listen more than I talk. I want to work with you, and together we can make District 2 the best district in Hennepin County. Thank you.
I'm Rolf Erickson. Please vote for me in the primary, August 14th. I don't have any baggage. I'm a citizen who's stepping forward to serve my time, to serve you, the people. As I said, I believe in government from the bottom up, and I want to serve the people, not be served by the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leslie Davis?
If you want more misery, you've got plenty of candidates to vote for. If you want to pull out of this mess that we're in and get this dysfunctional court system that splits the families with the children, there's crooked judges and they're ad litem cheating partners, destroying us. If they just know, if they think for a second that Leslie Davis is going to be elected county commissioner, it'll start to change overnight. The morale of the people will start to go up exponentially. But if you continue with the same old rhetoric, we want to sit and listen and blah, 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 I don't have to listen. I know what the problems are, and I have the solutions to them and the energy to go forward and the brains to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Kathleen Murdock.
I'm Kathleen Murdock, and I ask for your support on August 14th. I have the city government experience. I feel to do a good job and have many ideas about how we can cut costs. I'm a fiscal conservative. I will work to hold down property taxes, as we did in Plymouth for the last few years. We kept our tax levy flat. I have a reputation for listening to constituents. And I want to add, my first run for political office was 10 years ago for this exact same seat, County Commissioner District 2. There were 5 of us in the primary at that time, and I got through that, and I was running against Mark Stenglein at the time and got 44% of the vote, so I ask for your support. Thank you.
Well, my thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you again for your willingness to serve our community, to make Hennepin County a place that is a model for our state and a place that the quality of life for its residents is the prime concern. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Make sure you vote August 14th. We'll see you next time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We got to say goodnight. We want to thank Al McFarlane for bringing us all those great words and all our lovely guests, all the guests in the house. Everything's good, you know. So I want y'all to tune in every Tuesday morning, right around 9 o'clock. Cause we're gonna play you a song. All the guests will be home. We'll be feeling like talking. Have a robust conversation. All our guests in the house, 2 million people out there. I know you're listening on the internet. KFA High. Come on, listen to the show. Come on, Al McFarlane gonna let you know. Cause this thing he said, the message is clear. Everybody knows.